Now, we're going to hear from Brother Buck Griffith and the New Life Behavior Ministry. It's been talked about all these last 2 or 3 days. Now you're going to get to hear from the man himself, our national director, Brother Buck Griffith.
Well, I'm glad to see this august crowd still around in June. You know, we just had this previous session about mental health, and I heard a lot of people around here when they were greeting one another saying, "I'm fine." And you know what that stands for. You can kind of make up your own definition, but I put the F in fine for fearful, the I in fine for insane, the N in fine for neurotic, and the E for exhausted. So I'm fearful, I'm insane, I'm neurotic, and I'm exhausted. A few years ago, I mentioned flying. I have to fly a lot and run into people, especially when I change planes in Dallas. They think I look a lot like their ex-Dallas Cowboy head coach, Barry Switzer. Before that, he was the coach for the Oklahoma Sooners. And one time when I was changing planes there, I had the unfortunate experience. First of all, you have to understand that when I fly, my first objective is to be asleep before the wheels leave the runway. My second objective is to wake up in one piece when the wheels hit the tarmac, get to my destination. Well, there was this lady sitting in the lobby before we lined up. She kept looking at me funny. She looked like a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. She had boots on and a cowboy hat, and I thought I'd probably never see her again once we got on the plane. I always like to get on the far side next to the window, have a inside empty seat, and then somebody can sit on the aisle, and that way we can spread out, since we're kind of spreading anyway. Well, of all things, this lady came and sat down right between us. The guy on the aisle, believe it or not, was a furniture salesman from Kentucky. And so I'm all ready to zonk out, and this gal comes in clomping on those boots, and she sat right down between the furniture salesman and me, and I knew from the start she was a talker. And she put her purse between her legs, and she looked over at me and she whispered, "I know who you are." And I've been through that so many times. I decided this time I'm not going to just tell her, "No, I'm not Barry Switzer, I'm Buck Griffith." So I said, "Good." I thought I'd just shut it off right there, just good. And then she gets to talking to the furniture salesman, and I'm just about asleep. And she says, "You are who I think you are, aren't you?" And so before I could answer, she reached down in that purse and with one swoop pulled out a piece of paper and a pen. She said, "Would you autograph this for me?" I said, "What's your name?" "I don't know you." And so I wrote, "Susie Q, best wishes, Big Al." She looked at me and she said, she just mouthed it, "Big Al." And I said, yeah, a lot of people don't know it, but my middle name, and it really is, Alton. I said, especially when I'm out of town, I go by my nickname, Big Al. So she leaned back over, she thought about that a little while, and she said, you are Barry Switzer, aren't you? And I said, no, ma'am, I'm Buck Griffith. And she elbows in the furniture salesman and says, don't he look like Barry Switzer? And I thought, I never am going to get sleep. So ever since then, I've not used my Big Al anymore. Again, I want to mention, as I did earlier, that due to our time constraints, what I'm going to ask you to do if you want to be a certified NLB instructor is to write your name and your address down on a piece of paper, turn that into me, and as soon as I get back, we've already got the packets ready. We'll just slap a label on them and send you the packet. As soon as you go through all of that, fill it out and send it back, we'll send you your certificate. The certificate does become important sometimes when someone asks, are you certified to use this copyrighted material? And so it's good for you to have that. It's good for us to keep a record of that in case the authority wants to call us up to verify that you are in fact certified to use the curriculum. We also in recent years have added on there where it states that you're certified, we spell out the Christians Against Substance Abuse course and the Managing My Anger course, because those are two areas that oftentimes they want to make sure that the person using that curriculum is qualified to use that curriculum. Actually, the certification goes for any of our courses. I'm just going to touch some high spots with you today. First of all, just sort of a brief history of New Life Behavior Ministries. Our official name is actually Family Upreach Incorporated. It was begun in 1984 in Dallas, Texas by Dr. H.M. Motzinger, who appeared on one of our Zoom where he welcomed everybody and thanked everybody for being here. It was the brainchild of Dr. Motzinger. He was the president from 1984 to 2002 when they asked me to become the president. The office was in Lancaster, Texas, close to Dallas, and I said, well, I live in Corpus Christi, and that's where all my workers are and my supporters. If I do that, we're going to have to move the office, and they said, that's fine. So we moved the office and merged it in with our prison ministry office, which is the King's Crossing Prison Ministries. You know, it was an amazing thing back in about 1998. Up until that time, we always had our office inside the church building. But we have a Tuesday-Thursday school. Happened to be that one of our county judge's granddaughters was one of the students in our Tuesday-Thursday program. Pinky Bates was working with us full-time at that time as one of our prison ministers. And he happened to meet Pinky, and of course Pinky just spills his guts, you know, at a moment's notice or the drop of a hat, and he tells this county judge that he's a felon. And the judge kind of whispers in the ear of one of our elders that it might not be a real good idea to have a convicted felon on the same grounds with all of these minor children. And so the elders think about it a little bit, and they say, Buck, we probably ought to get us an office somewhere outside the church building. So we moved down the street a ways and got a commercial location. That's where both of those offices now operate out of together, King's Crossing Prison Ministries and New Life Behavior Ministries. Primarily since 1984, the name New Life Behavior Ministries has been emphasized rather than Family Upreach Incorporated. At the time, in 1984, some of you remember Herald of Truth. And they had a monthly magazine, a very attractive full-color magazine called Upreach Magazine. So they called us and said, you know, if you don't mind, there might be some confusion about this. And so the board of Family Upreach said, let's use another name, a DBA, and they chose New Life Behavior Ministries. Well, since it began really to reach out to prisoners, that was the first and foremost application. So today, most people think when they hear the name New Life Behavior Ministries, they think about jails and prisons. Well, we've worked really hard since I became president to make the material not so much directed specifically to offenders. Even the CASA course doesn't mention where you live, that you're incarcerated. You need to quit abusing alcohol and drugs wherever you are. So I find the Family Upreach name very uplifting, if you will, and has a lot more applications to local congregations, for Bible school curriculum, for ladies' Bible classes, for outreach ministries in the community. So many different ways that it can and should be used. Actually, only have 2 of our 15 courses that are specifically directed where it says your location that you happen to be incarcerated. So I'm really trying to emphasize Family Upreach Incorporated and a broader application of the material. Hopefully you can use this in your local congregations and in a lot of other ways. Now in 2023, January 1, hopefully, Dr. Dale Underwood, as I mentioned before, will take my place as the president of Family Upreach, DBA, New Life Behavior Ministries. So that's just kind of a brief overview. Now some of you know, Dr. Motzinger mentioned it in his presentation. In 2007, Dr. Motzinger called together a group of men and women who became the board of New Life Behavior International. And sometimes people mix those two up. NLBM, New Life Behavior Ministries, and NLBI, New Life Behavior International. They are in Dallas, and they have the specific purpose of expanding the use of the curriculum outside the United States, and our task is inside the U.S. borders. So whenever I get calls and emails and letters from people outside the U.S., I refer those to Mike Biggers, who's now the president of NLBI, and when he gets calls from within the U.S., he refers those to me in Corpus Christi. So that's a brief introduction. Now let's talk about the specific niche that this ministry applies to. We heard for years the complaints from wardens and from chaplains about religious groups that want to come in here on Sunday and save everybody. Where are the people that want to come in on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday and teach people how to change the way they behave? And that is the niche that NLBM fills. So we are about changing behaviors. Some people don't like that. They think that it all ought to be about hear, believe, repent, confess, and be baptized, and be faithful unto death, and I'll give you a crown of life. Well, that's wonderful. And we know that people can go to heaven regardless of how they're dressed, or how much education they've got, or how well they speak. But they can also go to hell if they don't change the way they behave. So we're responding to the cries of wardens and chaplains, and that's why this curriculum is so well respected and recognized by those in authority. Really, it's not one versus the other. It's both. We need to become united with Christ, and we need to live our lives as Christians. So hopefully that will help clarify that. There are some courses in New Life Behavior that are specifically directed to lead one to Christ. And one of those, and one of the best of those, is Course 10, the Seeker Bible Study Series. And that series was designed not for prisoners, but for just people in the community. Still going door knocking, door to door, and signing people up. But it's also an excellent course inside the prisons. So the Seeker Bible Study Series is specifically designed evangelistically. In fact, I always encourage, regardless of which New Life Behavior course is being taught in a prison setting, to get everybody to sign up day one to take a Bible correspondence course through the mail that will actually teach them about becoming a Christian and obeying the gospel. That way we're doing both at the same time and simultaneously, the New Life Behavior course face-to-face in the classroom setting, and then the gospel teaching course through the mail. Describe New Life Behavior. What is it? For years, I listened to Dr. Motzinger because he was my mentor, particularly in this ministry. And I would hear him say, it is a curriculum-based ministry. And I thought, well, I could say that real easy, but I wasn't real sure what it meant, Jerry. And it takes a while to find out. It is a curriculum-based program. Hear me, it is not a prison ministry. And what I found is that sometimes a prison ministry is reluctant to use New Life Behavior curriculum because they think that these are two competing entities. But it's not. I like to think of the NLB curriculum as a tool, like a tool chest. And hopefully your tool chest just doesn't have one Phillips head screwdriver, because you're going to need some other tools in that tool chest. But New Life Behavior curriculum is a tool, and I think a very good tool for you to add to your tool chest. What are the benefits to using the New Life Behavior curriculum? Well, obviously, number one, we've already talked about that, is it's recognized and respected by many who are in authority. And you heard a lot of that reflected the opening night with our wardens here. It also meets immediate needs. Probably the two greatest needs, substance abuse and anger, particularly in the settings that we find in our jails and our prisons. These terms, proven, time-tested, evidence-based, result-oriented. See, all of those suggest that this curriculum can be used successfully in changing the behaviors of men and women, transforming negative behavior to positive behavior. And again, that is something that the authorities are looking for. It's cognitive oriented. On my business card, I have the saying up in one of the corners, changing a way of thinking to change a way of living. And that's what we have to do. We have to change the way people think to change the way they behave. So another term to describe the curriculum is that it is cognitive oriented. And I have had various people in the mental health field that has said the person that is best suited for this curriculum is someone who is able to think, to reason logically, cognitively. Without that ability, they're going to have some struggles with this curriculum. It is not a college level curriculum at all. We're not trying to fail anybody. but they do need to have the basic ability to read, to study, to understand. We try not to use language and terms that are beyond their ability to understand, because we want them to get the message, to change a way of thinking, to change a way of behaving. Let me give you an overview of the NLB courses. First of all, just what are the courses? Because I don't have anything to pass out to you, and if you're not already familiar, the very first course that Dr. Motzinger wrote was in 1984. And at that time, he didn't know that there was going to be a course 2, or a course 3, or a course 4. He started with a sense of self. And it is still probably the most used of any of our curriculum. A part of that is because people look at the options and they see that's number 1, so let's start with number 1. And you know how a lot of us are, we just like to get in line and follow. And so the second course they teach is course 2, a sense of family. The third course they teach is course 3, parenting matters. The fourth course they teach is true freedom. That may be what suits your needs, or it may not be what suits your immediate needs. It's hard to beat a sense of self. In a sense of self, you're looking at who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? Why do I do the things I do? Why do I talk like I talk? Why do I think like I think? Pretty good foundational course for all of the rest of the courses. A sense of self. Course 5 is Christian marriage skills. And you know the most often heard comment from students, I wish someone had taught me this before my first marriage. I wish someone had taught me this 25, 30 years ago. And then course 6 is the Christian woman. Course 7 is attitudes and behaviors. Course 8 is Christians against substance abuse. And then course 9 is the Family Net series. Course 10 is the Seeker Bible Study series that I mentioned to you before. Course 11 is Prisoners of Christ. Course 12 is Managing My Anger. Course 13 is Christians Against Sexual Addiction. Course 14, which is our most recent course, is Managing My Dollar. And then there's the children's course. So there's 15 courses. Each one of those courses has 13 lessons. Each lesson has 12 pages. They're divided into 4 units per course. One of those units will have 4 lessons. The other 3 units will have 3 lessons. But 13 lessons per course. We have a test at the end of each of those lessons with 10 multiple choice questions. We're not trying to fail anybody. We've tried to make them as simple as possible. We even follow and we tell the student, it's going to start, your first question is going to come from the first part of the lesson. Question 5 will be about in the middle, and question 10 will be pretty close to the end. Again, we're not trying to throw anybody a curve. And you know, it's hard to get a consensus of opinion from people about the curriculum. Some people want to make it a college level course. I don't suggest that. At the same time, you don't want it to be so simple that they can pass it without even reading the text, without even studying the lesson itself. We suggest that in order to earn a certificate, the students are present for at least 10 out of the 13 lessons. And normally we're talking about 1 lesson a week, so 13 weeks, basically a quarter. And then we present them with a certificate. Now with our certificate at the bottom, there are 4 choices, 4 boxes. One is required attendance, and I always ask the guys when we start a new course, we go over this same material, and I'll say, what is the required attendance? 10 out of the 13 lessons. And then the second square that can be checked is perfect attendance. And we always have several who have perfect attendance. You may not make 100 on every test, but you can be present for every lesson. And then the third square is what we call exemplary participation. And I always like to ask the guys, what's that mean? Most of them don't explain exemplary, but they say participation means, hey, teach, doesn't that mean participate? Yeah, now how can you participate? And then we'll talk about several different ways that they can participate in each of the lessons as we go through. And we're watching and we're taking note of who's really into it and who is really participating. And then the fourth one is correspondence, because we have a number. In fact, we have about 32,000 just in our office that are taking these courses through the mail. So with that in mind, for any of you that are thinking about, or you may already be using this curriculum by mail, we have developed what we call a BCC, Bible Correspondence Course, format. And you can get this as well as the regular format, but instead of 12 pages, stop and think about that, you're using 12 sheets of letter-sized paper running through the copier. Even if you ran them front and back, you're talking about 6 pages. And so with the BCC format, what we've done is we've taken out a lot of the illustrations, none of the text, none of the actual teaching material, and we've reduced it down to 3 pages, front and back. If you're into this in a big time way like we are with 32,000 students, you think about every corner you can cut, particularly about postage. And for one postage stamp, you can put 3 letter-sized pages in that envelope, and that really helps. So if you're interested in that and you want to request the BCC format, we'll be glad to provide that for you as well. So there is a 4-step teaching plan. So you just take whatever time you've got allotted. If it's a 1-hour session, if it's a 2-hour session, we usually like to get a 2-hour session. And we're going to start off with just making everybody feel welcome. We like to, when the pandemic is over, we like to shake hands. We like to greet them. We like to smile at them. We like to see each other's faces. You know, that's really important at the very beginning of the class. Then we also like to have a prayer. If you have singing ability or someone in your team that can lead singing, or even if you have one of the students that is skilled in singing, you just have maybe a song and a prayer, but you honor prayer requests during that time. That can take up a little bit of your time, but it's valuable time, and it's time letting the students know that you really do care about them, about their families, and about their needs. And then the third part of that is actually the teaching of the lesson, and obviously that's the greater part of your 2-hour session or your hour session. And at the end, we call it decision time, and we're just asking everybody in the class to think about the lesson that we've had today, and what do you want to do with this information between now and next week. And we don't ask them to tell us that necessarily, but for them to make up in their minds, decide for themselves what they're going to do with this material between this time today and this time next week. And then next week in that opening time, that can be some really rich sharing. As they said, well, what I determined to do was this, and let me tell you about what happened, and it's a good thing. One of the other things that we often suggest to the students, if they're married or they have a significant other, a family member, a friend, to enroll that person in the same course through the mail while they're taking it in the prison. And boy, that really makes for some rich exchanges. When they have phone calls, when they have visits, and they talk about this same course that both of them are studying. And if they can't do it that way, we suggest that they take their course, and it's their lesson, so they take their pencil out or whatever they've got to write with, and they start marking things. Underline them, circle them, put a star, an asterisk by something, write in the margin. Sometimes they'll actually put, this is what I want to start doing right now. And then they mail them home. They mail them to the wife. They mail them to their friend. And their friend gets it. And boy, whenever they open that mail up and they start looking at that, they say, I wonder why he underlined that. I wonder what he meant by that asterisk over here. And then they do the same thing, hopefully with a different color pen or pencil, and then they send it back to him. And then he gets it back, and look what he's got. He's got the lesson that we wrote for him to study. He's got his notes on that lesson. He's got his wife's notes on that lesson. And don't you know, there's a lot of communicating going on. And so I just suggest to you that that one lesson can get to a lot of different eyes and minds and thoughts and bring about a lot of result. Now, Dr. Motzinger has used this curriculum overseas a lot. Now, he's in places like Zimbabwe, and they don't have a clock. And he doesn't have to get permission for a 1-hour class or a 2-hour class. They just meet till the cows come home, or if they don't come home, they go hunting them. And so they just sit there and they study and they study and they and he has developed an application of this for the responsive teaching method, dividing up into groups of 4 or 5. And you can already, those of you that are in prison ministry know the complications here. The number of additional helpers that you are going to need, and just the space that you're going to need, and the kind of if you're in desk chairs like we are a lot of times in our education buildings, moving those around. In fact, that's one of the first things the school teachers usually that same area are going to tell us is, don't drag the furniture on the floor. You're going to mess up the floor. And so you may not have the time, you may not have the personnel to do that. It is rich and rewarding. It's a really good model to use in local churches, but it's not going to fit in your conventional 45-minute Sunday morning Bible class setting. But whenever you get your packet, you're going to have a copy of that responsive teaching model, as well as what I've talked to you about, these 4 various sections of each teaching lesson. So the question often comes up, what course do I start with? Well, it's hard to beat a sense of self. But if you're doing this the way that we like to do it, in consultation with the chaplain and the warden, he's going to look at these 15 courses, and we're going to say, which of these do you think is most needed on your unit at this time? Generally, they're going to come up with either Christians Against Substance Abuse or Managing My Anger. And so you scratch where it itches. If that's the need, then that's what you do. Some of the units we go on are total substance abuse units. Now, what they're getting from the staff of that facility doesn't have much God in it, if any. And so they want us to come in with the God component, and they want us to teach Christians Against Substance Abuse every time. So we finish one quarter, and we just start with a new group of students on another quarter. but you ask what would best meet the needs of the unit. And some of them are going to say, well, our guys or our gals really need Christian marriage skills, or they need parenting matters. If it's a women's facility, obviously the Christian woman course would be a good use. Now, what are our plans for the future? Hopefully by the end of this year, we're going to have a new course called the Christian Man course. We've had the Christian Woman for a number of years, but we've not had the Christian Man companion course. Hopefully that'll be done by the first of next year. Then we've been asked again, mostly by chaplains and wardens and parole offices, to do something on a pre-release level. So we've got the outlines and we're just getting started on putting together a pre-release course. So obviously these would be people that are within the last few months or years, probably no more than 2 years out, as they begin making preparation for release. Then at some time we hope to have a post-release one, but once you've lost your captive audience, that's going to depend upon the interest and the drive and the enthusiasm of the individual parolee. So those are some things that we're looking forward to in the future. Dr. Montsinger's real enthusiasm right now is getting the New Life Behavior courses online. You just heard Brother Patton talk about the World Bible School courses online. We hope to have the New Life Behavior courses online. Now again, most of the inmates are not going to have access to the internet, but their wives will, their husbands will, their families will, their parents will, and so it will open up a lot more opportunities to share this same curriculum. We have about half of the courses now produced in a bound student format, so that you really don't have to run them off on a copy machine or a printer. You can get them from us for a little bit less than it costs to actually run them on a copier. Some places have copies made for them free, so don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Take advantage of that if you've got that, but the bound printed books are really impressive. And whenever a warden or a chaplain wants to know what you're proposing to teach on that unit, and you can just hand them one of these books, that's a lot more impressive than looking at 13 lessons, 12 lessons, 12 pages per lesson, and you're handing them 144 sheets of paper. So that you run off on your copier. And we have discovered that all copiers are not created equal. And tell you the truth, when we see some of those and it's got our name on it, we're a little bit embarrassed, but there's not a whole lot we can do about that. One of the other things is we're going to make greater use of DVDs. In a lot of the prisons, you can have access to a TV, DVD setup. This could really make a lot of the teaching situations easier. Your instructors wouldn't have to teach the whole course themselves. They could turn, we plan to put that in either 15-minute or at the most 30-minute pieces. So you play that part of the lesson, and then you stop and discuss with the class. You play another section, stop and discuss with the class. Don Humphrey, that wrote The Meanest Man in Texas, also has an office in our office in Corpus Christi. He and his wife Kim have just recently relocated to Corpus Christi permanently, and we're looking forward to having what we call Meanest Man in Texas weekends. And you can imagine how this is going to work. On Friday night, we asked the unit to bring as many people as want to see the movie to the gym or wherever they have room, and as many people as can fit in there will come to see the Meanest Man in Texas movie. Of course, Don will be there. We'll schedule some time on Saturday and again on Sunday to have a follow-up to that, a question and answer period, because you know how movies are. There may be a very small clip in a movie, and if you've read the book, you know that there's a whole lot more to that story. But they can ask those questions of Don himself and get more information about Clyde Thompson and the meanest man in Texas. On Sunday morning, we're scheduling just a normal worship period followed by baptisms. And we like to present it this way to the chaplains in a format where it's already listed that Sunday morning we're going to follow it with baptisms. A lot of times these guys have been on the baptism list for a long time, and they've been waiting to be baptized a long time. And this creates an opportunity for that to actually take place. That means that we'll probably have more of the Meanest Man in Texas weekends, at least for the next few years, than we have previously with the Reconciled and Renewed seminars. But we may have some of both. And those, again, are Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday morning, followed with baptisms. One thing that you may not be aware of, and I want you to know about, is the VetNet program. A few years ago, we looked at a lot of this curriculum, and we thought, you know, this really meets the needs of a lot of our military people. They're suffering from post-traumatic stress. They're suffering from anger, from substance abuse. Many were abusing substances when they entered the military, and they didn't get any better while they were in the military. And so the marriage skills, the parenting matters, all of these are great needs of those who have been in the military. So we supply these free to the military, to whether they're active or they're reserve or they're veterans, and to any member of their family. And so that's a growing program with New Life Behavior VetNet. And the concept there is, if you just see that safety net that we've used with this theme this week, the family may not be the best place for them to go when they're released. But let me tell you, a lot of times it's the only place that they've got to go. And we better strengthen it as best we can. We need to do whatever we can to make it stronger than it already is. And that's what we're trying to do. So Family Net creates that safety net. VetNet creates a safety net to try to salvage everyone that we can. Questions? Anybody got questions? Yes, sir.
Information. Oh, he needs to get a mic.
Well, just a minute, we'll try to get a mic to you.
Okay.
While he's doing that, let me explain also that our courses, copyrighted, have a fee of $95 per course. You get an individually numbered license to use that course. So you want to use a sense of self, so you get an individually numbered license for a sense of self that gives you unlimited reproduction rights, lifetime, and free updates on the course. So it's really a very small fee for a lifetime product. And we've had some churches say, well, we want to get them all. I probably shouldn't say this, but I really don't encourage churches to do that, because how are you going to teach 15 courses at the same time, or five courses in one prison? As I mentioned, some of them are going to want you to teach the same course the next time to new students, the same course the next time to new students. So you may not need but one course, or you may want 2 or 3, but all of them, that's probably not a practical use of your funds, and there'll probably be a lot of them sitting on the shelf. And what you get is a CD. If you need them in some other format, we can accommodate you there too. Your question, sir?
I don't know if I can generate it,
the correct way, so what I'm trying to get at is clear, but I'm still trying to make sure that what y'all do there will take root, at least as far as the people, but when we're talking about all the different states have different ways of declaring what's right and what's proper, that we can have something to come back to you, and y'all can go to, or we can go to the state regulating our states to make sure we clarify that this is not only what they say, that it's applicable to all the 50.
Right. On the same CD, you have what we call a formal proposal, and that formal proposal explains what that particular course is about. It explains what it's designed to do for the student, for the offender, what it's designed to do for the student, the offender's family, what it's designed to do to help the institution, and what it's designed to do to help that student after he is released. And so this is basically something that you present to get approval to come in and teach whatever course it is that you're wanting to teach. And it's a different proposal for each course, depending on the subject matter. And generally, that's going to help them decide, yes, this is something that we want. And you heard on opening night the comments from so many of the wardens. What they want is something that is organized. They want something that has a system to it. And that's one of the reasons why they like this curriculum so much. Chaplains are audited each year. And whenever there is an audit, the big boys come down and they ask the warden, you've got this Christian marriage skills class offered on your unit. What authority have you got to have this on this unit? And so we issue a license to the chaplain on the unit as well. Sometimes they request that in advance. Sometimes they don't request it, but we're always ready to present it to them and to send a complete copy of the series of that particular lessons to them, so that whenever they're audited, they've got it right there in their file. Any other questions? I think everybody's just about ready to go home. Is it Scott?
Thank you. My experience is working in a county jail. Would you just maybe speak a couple sentences about what your approach would be for a county jail where you don't have the inmates very much? You might just have them one time only.
Excellent question. Our Prisoners of Christ course, course 11, is specifically designed for that. Now, half of that course is for county jail. Half of that course is for prison. I mentioned that there's 4 units to each course, so the first 2 units of Prisoners of Christ could be used with a certificate designed for those who have finished Unit 1, another for those who finish Unit 2, and so forth. But you wouldn't have to wait until 13 lessons. You wouldn't even have to teach all 13 lessons. But what that series in those first 2 units do for the person in the county jail is that it helps him deal with, there's lessons in there about going to court, there's lessons in there about bail. There's the people in the county jail are much more likely to be released sooner into the community than going to a prison. And so we better do something with them while we've got them in the county jail. And we have some pre-release material in that one to get them ready to go home, and how the support that they need after they get out of the county jail. It also helps in the prison ministry, because when they start that 3rd unit, they're going to have to think about in advance, what kind of prisoner am I going to be in the prison? And if they start from day one arriving at the prison thinking about being a good influence in the prison, that makes a whole lot of difference. A lot of people don't even think about that. They just they come and get them and take them on the bus and they go off to prison. But if we can get them thinking about that from day one, as soon as they hit the prison, they're gonna learn a lot more. They're not gonna have as much wasted time, and they're gonna be a better influence on the prison ministry. So the first half is designed for county jail. The second half is designed for the prison. And you can do that really with all of the courses. You could, instead of giving them one certificate at the end of 13, you could give them 4 certificates. One for Unit 1, one for Unit 2, one for Unit 3, and then one for the completion of the entire series. And the certificate that you get on the CD, you can just put it in your computer and print the person's name on it, and you could change the verbiage there as far as Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3. All right. Jerry, I think that's just about got us done. You want to come up here and turn the horses loose?